Okay, so we have a big old major live stream going on right
Bonjour à
now.
tous. Welcome everyone. Thank you for
We are
listening
checking
to
out this is
third
like a
video
very
stream of
much a
Dead
pop-up
Space.
stream. Oh geez.
I'm with Raman Campos Oriola, creative
Mr. Much.
director.
So yes, this is a very much a pop-up stream. I meant to go live a little bit earlier, but I slept late.
The art direction of the original Dead Space was
Yeah,
extremely
so we're
strong.
checking out
It
Dead
had
Space.
a
It's
distinctive
basically like an
visual
art direction
signature
stream,
that helped
developer
set
live
it
stream.
apart
They're showing a little update on like what they've been working
We'll
on.
start off our presentation today with Mike talking about the visual pillars and how it's used as the foundation for the game. Then we'll move at looking at assets that was created by our team through videos that explain how we use these visual pillars from an architectural and environment pieces, from lighting, from VFX, and characters. And just like last times, we're going to wrap all of this up with some in-game look at one of the more iconic rooms of the Ishimura. That room's going to turn on, so it's going to be pretty amazing. All right, just like past live streams, there is a disclaimer. We are still pre-alpha, so mainly what it means is that the content that you'll see is going to be uneven in terms of quality. There's going to be assets showcasing gems from the editor straight out, looking placeholder, some buggy stuff. That's normal for the stage of the project that we're in.
There's going to be some amazing stuff also.
Well, there's also going to be some pretty amazing stuff. Hopefully that you agree with us. However, we're progressing very well for our alpha deliverables. Just 2 weeks ago, we were able to do our first full walkthrough of the game where all content was present. And next week, we are going to do this with our community council.
That means they're just
Council,
down
for
to
those of you
bug
who don't
fixes
know,
now.
is a group of passionate fans that have been with us since early in the conception of the project, providing feedback and getting undisclosed access to the game that we're making.
Okay, so they're going
And
to
just like
bug
past live
fixing
streams,
testing
we
phases, so
actually
they're
have
getting
a member of the community
close to
council
going
that's here
gold
with us
then,
today.
hopefully.
We have
Unless
Blaine
anything
Smith
majorly
from
pops
Bangman
up.
TV joining us. Hey Blaine, how are you?
Good. Happy to be able to talk about some of this, and definitely happy to be able to, have this sweet baseball tee from y'all featuring the Ishimura. Although I am getting a little insecure watching how it fits Romain versus how it fits the rest of us. Not quite filling out the same way.
You have more titles.
The jealous factor.
Oh.
So, all right. Well, let's kick it off, right? Let's start.
Yeah, absolutely. So
There's a few news
art
items to go
which,
over too after
is
this
definitely
gets
one of the
all
strongest
done.
aspects of Dead Space, and of course we have a fantastic guest from Motive here. We have an art director in the house, but I don't know if necessarily all of us will know exactly what an art director does. So do you want to
They direct art
on what your work on the Dead Space game?
They make sure
has been
everything
so
is very shiny. That's actually part of it.
I got no audio on this.
So what's an art director then?
Oh, okay. What's an art director? That's a good question. So what I usually do is my day-to-day is I collaborate with Roman and Phil and the other directors and the leads on the project. I work very closely with the art team. I provide them with guidelines to make sure that the visuals look unified across the game. And I maintain the artistic vision throughout the project to keep a consistent look in all our chapters. So I think that kind of summarizes what I do.
Right.
And from what I understand, this also actually isn't your first Dead Space game.
Oh, we actually lost audio from Blaine.
Audio drop.
Oh no!
Oh,
no!
You'll have to mime Blaine, I guess.
It happens. Yes.
Oh, you're gonna draw.
He is
That's
gonna,
gonna be good.
gonna write it. It's funny.
All right. Well, actually, we'll kick it off on our side until we resume like the issue with the microphone. I think it's on our side. So, Mike, why don't you walk us through actually? Some of the art
Absolutely.
direction pillars.
That's great. So what we're going to do today is through various images and videos, we're going to show you how we're honoring the legacy and staying true to the
what is
original
happening
game.
with. They're still having these
What we
technical
wanna do
difficulties.
first is look at some of the art pillars that define and influence the Dead Space look. So the first and most important one is horror storytelling.
Okay.
So even though the Dead Space universe is set hundreds of years in the future, the main art pillar is horror as opposed to sci-fi or fiction.
Right. They did horror
Since
very
it's
well
so important to us,
in
we really
Dead
are
Space.
like doubling down on that, and we just can't
It,
go on.
it was a
Here's
pew
why
pew
Dread
shooter,
Horror
but
is
So the
a
lighting,
double
the
pillar
mood,
in
the
the game.
atmosphere, the color palette of the locations are all affected by this pillar. I mean, it also influences the look of the necromorphs, gore, dismemberment, and corruption.
yep.
And it goes as far as influencing the design of the weapons, right? Because they're based on power tools. So that kind of sums up the first pillar. The second key visual pillar is one of immersion.
Immersion.
So to be scared, you have to believe what's in front of you. Just like in the original Dead Space, our goal is to always maintain a sense of immersion, to keep the player captivated
How about
and the settings
the most immersive
believable
thing of
and
all?
grounded.
Dead Space VR? How about we get
So
that?
the third pillar
You'd shit your pants behind Dead
is-
Space VR if it was done
a
right.
lived-in world. Now, since the Dead Space universe is rich in environmental storytelling, every object
Yeah.
tells a story and has a meaning. So when you look around and you're in the Ishimura, you see the effects of aging and weathering everywhere you look. So another key thing is resource conservation, right? That
I
is key
really
to
need to sit down and play through
all
Dead
the
Space 2 and
objects
3.
are
I've never done
repurposed
that.
and reconfigured.
I really
That's
gotta
quite
do that.
important to us. So those are the main three visual pillars of Dead Space.
It's not a new ship. Like it's been used,
Oh
it's
no,
been around.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
I
62
mean,
years old.
it's interesting
the
when
end
you
of its
say
life
the
cycle. It's quite
lived-in
old,
world because
and you see that.
what we've learned from the
So that's kinda
Blaine, I
science.
know you're talking, but we still can't hear you, so that's something that we're trying to resolve on our side. So, but actually, like, what are the things that we're going to look at that follows it? Is actually there's a lot of symbolism, right, in
Right.
the original Dead Space.
Yes.
So let's have a look at what roles it plays in the art.
He's trying so hard.
Absolutely.
He has
there's a lot
one
of
job and
symbolism
he's
in Dead
trying
Space,
so hard to
and,
do it.
I want to show you some of that and how it influences the look and mood of the game. So, for example,
Oh my
we've-
God, no matter
we've
where I
talked
put my
about
camera,
this,
it's gonna cut
on many
something off.
occasions during the community council before. The Ishimura is like a haunted house, and the design is influenced by the Gothic architecture with lots of evocative shapes.
Okay.
So that's quite prominent. The second one is how
Maybe that's the reason why I
Ishimura
like the
is a
environments in Dead
character.
Space, even though
It's
is
a
like
broken
the
machine that is
same.
alive and sick, both physically and mentally, and the user interface is its voice. It sort of talks to us. The locations, they're purposely built with low ceilings and narrow spaces to make it feel claustrophobic, like you're trapped
Yeah.
inside a maze.
We'll see later how we actually reinforce that with
Absolutely.
lighting, VFX.
Yes. And then lastly, the necromorphs, right? Since you're on a haunted ship, a haunted house, they're like the ghosts that haunt Isaac and torment him on his journey to hell, all the way to his final destination. So that essentially summarizes some of the key, symbolism that you find in the game. What we wanted to do next
They can't name
is,
drop it,
know,
but there's a
cover-
lot of
like, now
influence
that
of,
we've covered the symbolism, we
aliens
wanna
in
look
it
at
too.
how
Like
we're
that's
updating
that's
the
one of the
classic
reasons why a
by
lot of people
looking at
loved it
visual
so
upgrades
much,
for the remake.
because it really felt
So
like you're
what
on
we
the
can
ship
do is
and
maybe
a
play the
xenomorph was going
video
to come out at any
of
moment.
The props and weapons. So in 2008, the original dev team created
Wow.
a game that was amazing
Right.
for its time, and it's our commitment to respect their vision and rebuild on the same pillars. We're
An
taking the
area
original
dick.
game and building the Gen 5 version and keeping the recipe that we all know and love.
Nice.
As you
So
can see from
all
these before
all new
and after
textures.
examples, we're using the original art
Yeah.
as a starting point as we redesign and remake the assets.
Redoing
from the
textures. It
ground
looks like
up.
there's slightly
We're
redesigned and everything
retaining the
too.
overall shape and look of these objects to respect the Dead Space art
Very cool.
direction. And we're adding more functionality, layers of detail, and a lot more realistic materials. So as you can see in
I
these
wonder
examples,
what
the
the,
before and afters
I would
is
love to see a
time and
map
time again.
design, like a top-down view of the map
Yes.
design of it. I'd love to see that. See what's
Gorgeous
happening.
looking game. And of course,
all that.
one of our favorites. I know, Blaine, you love this one.
The Ripper, when
Yes.
it cuts people in pieces. Well, not people, but necromorphs in
Yes.
pieces. It's gory. It's fantastic.
It's dark. Can't see
Awesome.
anything.
Cool. So, so what what I'd like to talk a little about now is the part that we've all been waiting
Like I
for.
said, they're trying. They're
to
trying
show
very hard to make a
how
really good
we're creating
live
our
stream.
visuals in 4
Give me one
in-depth
second.
videos.
Let me just
so
grab
the goal
this,
here
throw it over
is to give
here.
a sneak peek
Sorry.
of our art process
Sorry.
by showing work in progress captures from software. So in the first video, the environment team will take us behind the scenes and show how our chapters are constructed from beginning to end.
Cool. Cool.
The second video, the VFX team is going to follow up with some pyro and fluid simulations in gyms and some quality upgrades. Next up, character team will present how they built the level 3 engineering suit and of course the slasher. And in the last video, the lighting team will walk us through some of
Pretty
the
sure
cool
that's
tech behind
Unreal
the
Engine
lighting
that they're
in the
working with
game,
on this? That's
including
cool.
real-time global illumination and volumetric lighting.
So a lot to come there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of goodies.
All right, well,
So-
let's kick it off with the environment video.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Roy Toison.
Hello.
And I am the Associate Art Director for the Dead Space Remake. Today, I want to talk to you about the environment art process, how we are remaking the game with our new tools, techniques, and pipelines, and finally do a demo in the Frostbite engine on how we took a room from the legacy version
Oh, it is
to
Frostbite
a current
engine.
work in progress.
It definitely
Today,
looks like the Unreal
we are going
Engine.
to look at the MRI room in Chapter 2. When Dead Space was released more than 14 years ago, the visuals were great. It set the bar high for its time.
Right.
But since then, technology has evolved, and with
Yeah,
that,
it's
it
definitely
allowed us to
starting to feel
remake
its
the game
age.
and
That's
really
for sure. The
accentuate
last time I
main
played it a
pillars
few
of
years ago, I
horror,
was like, ooh.
immersion, and a lived-in world. Let me quickly go over our process with you. On the environment side, we break down our pipeline into 6 phases that go from L0 to L5. L0 is our R&D phase where we
Right.
analyze the original game and identify what we can remake this area,
Mhm.
either through gameplay, visuals,
This
sound,
is a
etc.
really cool
Based
video,
off any
actually,
changes,
showing.
we would do some
showing the
exploration
process.
concepts to improve on the art pillars.
I know most of this. I don't know all of it.
L1. This phase is when the area will be playable, with rough blockout
Yep.
of the visual intentions. When recreating
This is
a room
basically
in
like the
Frostbite,
prototype
artist will break
slash
it down
alpha
into kits,
phase.
pieces that they can use to build the room. Think of this as Lego blocks. They will be simple shapes, sizes that represent the theme of the room. L2
You're also
is
getting down
where
your map
details and
route
colors
of,
are added into
we
the
want the
kits
player to go
to
here
support
to
the
here to
thematic
here,
of the
and
area.
then the art team and
Large
the lighting
props
team and
are
the sound
staged,
team have
and
to
the initial
design
mood
everything to
will be
go,
set.
hey, what's over there?
L3 is where we start to update the different PBR materials to a more realistic look. Add more props to support
Textures
the
are finally
theme,
added.
and refine the lighting and VFX. You should start to get that immersive feeling by having the area more relatable and believable. L4 is where we add all the narrative elements. All the architectural kits get a polish pass with a wear and tear. Small
This
props,
way.
signs, markings, bloodstains, dirt, and grime are added to get that lived-in world feeling and give that horror storytelling element. L5 is where the polished elements of all
No.
the art
There's
departments
nothing.
get integrated
When you
to give
came
that
here,
final high-quality
it actually
next-gen
completely cut
Dead
it off.
Space
Oh,
look.
no.
We had audio.
This will be
no.
coming soon.
So me
We
and
can
Roman had
hear
Just to
you.
get
audio.
a
Mike
proper
did
understanding
no.
of where we are in the production for this area, we are here in the beginning
Somebody hit a wrong
stages
button.
of our
They've
L4
hit a lot of
phase.
wrong buttons in this live
Now that
stream.
you know how we work, we want to next demonstrate how we will remake
They've had
these
2 years to
assets.
figure this out.
Here is an example of a legacy
Anything
asset.
You hear the video?
And here are some
No,
of the
I don't hear
elements we
anything.
plan
Okay,
on
so he
adding
does-
to get that immersive feeling.
Oh
throughout
no,
the
they're
ship.
freaking out. Even
We
though
want
we
to
can
show
hear it.
functionality. Rivets in the metal to show how it was put together. Latches on the window frames to show how the workers can remove it if it ever needed to be repaired. The
Hmm,
variation in our PBR materials.
cool
The
details.
way light reacts to different types of painted metal versus the raw metal underneath.
This is a very cool video
More
too.
realistic light fixtures. The dirty glass cover protects the light sources, giving that depth and more realistic feel. Add more shape and depth to the model.
Is
to
it
give
making
that
the lighting? Because
believable
if that was
look.
like
To get that old live-in
RTX
ship look,
lighting,
we added
like
wear
ray
and
trace
tear to
lighting, the
paint
dirt
metal
on the
and dirt
glass would actually
accumulation in
affect how much
areas
light's coming
that
through.
would not normally get
Because
cleaned.
it's the AI engine.
Now that we've
working on
highlighted a
that.
few examples of
Which is
how
actually
we're
really
gonna
cool.
remake an asset, in our next section, we want to put you in the seat of an artist and show you how our tools, techniques, and
Cool.
pipeline works.
Hi there, I'm Evan Jovanovich, Senior Environment Artist on the Dead Space Remake, and I'm going to give you a closer look at how we make assets for the Ishimura. Here is an example wall asset as it passes through all the various stages of production. L1, raw model made to specific metrics for maximum reuse. L2, further refined modeling and color paths added. L3, more modeling details are added, custom masks are baked to control grime and wear using in-engine tools. L4, fine trim and embedded details are added as well as beveled edges. Next, we will have a look in Maya to see how the color path is achieved. Here in Maya, we'll be using the palette UV
So
tool
many people
created by
just
our tech team
run
to
by
help change the
everything
colors
and they
of
don't
our
even
wall mesh.
notice the
On
details.
the right-hand side, we can see the UV coordinates of the model, which correspond to the mesh's faces.
Huh.
As I click the different swatches in the UV palette tool, the UV shells are moved to different quadrants, resulting in a color change. By using this palette system, we are able to keep colors consistent to art direction and swap in different palette textures for each district theme, such as clean, industrial, and public, depending on the assets used within the ship. Now, let's dig into how some of our mesh details are achieved. Here in Blender, I'm going to show you one of our trim sheet texture sets I made by rebuilding and
Blender,
remixing
okay,
details
yeah.
from the original Dead Space into a new texture layout. As we can see, this texture set uses parallax
This is
collision
well,
mapping, which allows you to mimic depth and details on an otherwise very simple
Right.
geometry.
A lot of
One
people that do
technique we have
mods
explored for
for, like,
applying
say,
these
like
texture
Resident
sets
Evil
on models
and stuff like
is
that,
using the third-party
they
add-on
use
Decam
this
machine to define
program right
specific
here.
parts
So
of
this
the texture
Blender,
set
okay,
to
that's
a
what I
library,
was looking
which
at
can then
before.
be easily swapped and adjusted on the model. As you can see, this technique makes it fun to try out different trim combinations and can produce some interesting results. Here we will apply the same library to the wall example we saw before. Through use of these trim textures, we are able to quickly try different approaches and create consistent details. We try our best to focus on how these models would actually be constructed, creating panel lines where pieces meet and connect, as well as adding handles and access points where parts could be removed for maintenance and cleaning.
His screen is super zoomed in right there. That was
Hi, I'm Xavier Perrault, and I am the lead environment artist on the Dead Space remake. I will be talking more in the details about our approach to level art and how we set the tone of the different areas of the ship
So
and
waking
tell
up,
the
so-
story of the Ishimura through our environments. We have now the architectural modules modeled and their mask baked using our engine tool. The masks will define how the wear and grime build up on each of the modules. You can tell how the edges are scratched and how rust sits in the creases. The architectural shader reads those masks, and by tuning the parameters of the master shader, we can control the amount of wear and grime in a whole section of the ship at once. The shader defines the ground state of the architecture visuals, but at this point it all looks the same everywhere. The world masking volumes come in play. They are fully scalable and can be used in many ways for multiple layering effects.
Oh, that's actually really
We can
cool.
increase
Okay.
the amount of wear or rust built up on the assets, or even add new layers on top, like water or dust, for instance.
Wow. So it's
Of
all
course,
automated.
These techniques
It
are
just-
better applied once the assets
it
are
just
put in
layers on.
context
That's cool.
in the level. Tuning the master shader and adding volumes of world masking are an integral part of defining the storytelling of the ship.
So if you
and how
ever
it has
walked
aged over time.
into a level
With a growing
and
library
you
of
notice like
architectural
everything
modules,
looks very plain
can
and
be
there's no dust, there's no
assembled to
dirt or
fully build
anything, and all
all
of a sudden it
the
goes
sections
bloop
of
and it
the
just pops
Ishimura
in.
as one
It's
big
because it's trying to
interconnected
load
ship
each of these
in line
layers
with our
in, and
metric
one of the
guidelines.
layers is not quite there yet. If you
Then
wait
comes the-
and as soon as the layer pops in, if you keep like
Then
looking
comes
at the
the
screen,
main
you'll see it.
lighting
Bloop,
intentions
it'll
and
just
the
pop
props
in.
dressing.
Usually
We
it
always
happens a
ask
ton on
ourselves what
older
the function of
titles,
that
but
room is,
sometimes it'll
how do
happen
we
too if the
make it
game engine isn't
believable,
keeping up
and
with
tell the
the
story of the people
you know,
that live there
with the
and
progression
how
of the
the
player
events took
too.
place.
It's just-
Projected
it's just data
decals of
streaming.
labeling and gore are step further. We can add a few world masking volumes to wear down the floor in a realistic way where people use
That's
to
literally
stand
every
and walk
game.
around in
Anytime
the
you see
setup.
that, it's just the
Maybe a
data
water
stream.
canister fell over near that desk and leaked all over
It's
the
it's a
floor.
combination of both the
But
game
that was
engine
a
and
while
the
ago,
system.
and rust built up all around it.
That's why when a lot of people
After
go,
seeing our pipeline, tools,
developers,
and
you don't know what you're
in-engine
doing.
demo,
It's like, well, no, they
using the
probably
small
worked on
room
their
besides the
machine. It's just
MRI
not working on
machine,
your machine.
you can see in this before and after comparison, we remade this room to accentuate the art pillars even more. We want the player to believe that the Ishimura crew worked here, that the functionality of this room makes sense, and you can even imagine yourself working in this environment.
They took the fan out.
If I take this part of the room, for example, before there used to be some shelves, lockers, and props around the wall with some writing on the ground. We remade it to have more immersive and believable theme. We made this corner of the room more functional by adding an examination bed with medical equipment. We gave that lived-in world by aging the walls and floors with some wear and tear, added dirt and grime. This is the oldest functioning mining ship. We wanted to make sure that came through in the environment. Finally, we injected the horror pillar into this room with a bloody narrative scene on the bed and floor. We want to insinuate that something horrible happened here and give that sense of danger looming around every corner. Thank you for joining us on this behind-the-scene look at the environment art process.
I'm really, really curious to see, with all the stuff being redone, remade,
Hey, we're back.
remastered,
So,
basically.
Blaine,
'cause-
can we hear you now? Do you hear us?
I hear you. Are you
And we
there?
hear you.
Hey.
All right.
Hey,
What's up,
Blaine?
We got comms working. Nice. Now
Everything that they're
I
showing
get
here
to
is
the engine
technically still a
room.
remaster. It's not really a
There's work to be
remake.
done there.
Yes.
They have remade it,
Ishimura, right?
but they've remade it into
You know,
a
it
remaster.
wouldn't be Dead Space if everything was working
If
smoothly.
it, again, if it's a
so, you know, this
remake,
was
they
just a
have
little
changed
Easter egg
story
for you
stuff.
in
So
the
that's
chat.
what
Thanks
the
for
next thing
coming
I'm
out
very
and
curious to
catching
see
the
is
live
what
stream
are they going
and
to
showing
drop
you
any
that
hints
true
of
Dead
changing up
Safe space
storyline stuff,
experience.
depending
And,
on
man,
different rooms and art
we,
style
we,
stuff.
we in
and
the
everything
council
that
got
they
to
might be
play a
talking
little bit
about.
of this early on, and that was a much emptier room when we walked into it. A lot less scary. It's really cool to see that. To keep with that horror pillar, you're creating these little scenes in rooms, these little stories. Is the story department working with the art department to like write
Of
little
course.
things like that?
Yes.
Absolutely. Our narrative group
how
works
game
with,
development works.
Our level art group, and make sure that they're collaborating on and looking at every single chapter of the game, area by area, and coming up with little stories that they want to tell.
Audio department too
to
works
make
with
it
this.
feel like each area has life and there's a story, and just to show how the crew lived right before the events that you see in the,
Okay,
in
I
the
wish I could
game,
pause this.
and of
This
course
is-
after the attack and so on. So there's a lot of work that's placed there by the team as they're crafting this.
My God.
It's a real collaborative effort between
Yes.
narrative, level design, level art, audio. Everybody is really involved into that. And not only we're looking at what we want to do, but also most of the time we're looking at what was in the original. And
Especially with this.
often we keep that and enhance it. Sometimes based on some
You
evolution
should really
of
start
the
using
narrative
this as
that
an
we
example
want to
because you can
make,
see it better.
we can
Especially with this.
slightly change or evolve those.
This
those
thing
elements.
tells a story just as much as anything
But
else does
that's
because you're
really
feeling it in
our
your
goal
hands
is to
now.
keep that pillar of the original that was each room, each corridor, each places had something unique. Something you could remember that room or that place because of that sound, because of that writing on the wall, because of the blood of the little narrative in that place. And that's something that we want to keep and that we
Okay.
want to reinforce going further.
Then that's a remaster.
Yeah, it's really great to hear about all the teams working together on this, and I love thinking about someone just walking around the office with an absolutely terrifying notebook of little rooms. Hey, 1C, what
Yes.
happened in 1C? Dear God.
Yes.
The jump scare Bible.
Yes, pretty much. And
I like
that's
that,
one of
the
the
jump scare
opportunities,
Bible,
like we
that's
saw
good.
in the video, is that we look
I
at
like
an
that.
area that existed before, and how can we amp it up and enhance it, right? To kind of have a richer
Again, that's a
experience in
remaster.
storytelling.
That's, you're rebuilt.
And then one of the
We should start
interesting
using the
things
word
is that you
rebuilt
guys are
instead of
talking about
remake.
making things look realistic and usable. But of course, it's not realistic and usable. This is a planet-cracking mining ship. How do you approach making something look as though you can picture yourself using it and operating this when you can't actually because it doesn't exist and you can't use it or operate it?
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
you
that's
can
been
in the
part
game.
of what we talked about
Stop being so
originally. The horror pillar
optimistic.
is making sure that it feels scary, but at the same time, it is relatable, right? So when you look at the locations, the props that are there, we intentionally make sure to keep them feeling realistic as possible, and not going too sci-fi. Because if we do that, then it alienates the player, and you don't really know, and you can't relate to that environment.
Alienates.
So we purposely make sure that we continue in the same vein of keeping objects, whether it's the MRI room or fire extinguisher or chairs and so on, as real to us as possible, so we can relate to that and we can be immersed in the world. And then of course we'll be scared when we have like a necromorph that comes out of nowhere. Right? We'll have our guard down.
It's about making these places understandable for the player, that can project yourself in trying to imagine how those things work. Like if there's massive engine, okay, where's the console that control that? If it's the MRI, same thing. Where are the people actually working with those stuff? What are the tools they are using? Where are they sitting? All those kind of things. That's the elements that are making those places believable, even though
the mini
spaceship,
games too,
does not
like
necessarily exist, or at least not in this
where's the
form.
box I gotta
Still has to
grab?
be
Where's the
functional,
switch
right?
I gotta
so,
switch?
So when we do
Alright.
concepts for these pieces that are more complicated, or the hero pieces, it is a lot the work that the concept teams are looking at. They're trying to make sure that this machine would work. How would it work so that it is functional when we put it in a game and it makes sense.
See?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems like everybody on this team has to know a lot of different things.
Welcome to game design.
It's about
But
the
you know, we've
passion
been
of
talking.
making it. That's
We've
the
been
thing.
talking a
Yeah.
little bit. You know,
That's
we
the
had
passion
some,
of it.
we had some little explosions tech-wise. I think you guys also have some explosions to show us.
Kaboom!
Oh yeah, that's,
That's
a
a
good
nice
segue.
transition.
Wow.
That's
But it's not the first time you do this. is it?
No.
So let's take a look at the VFX video. And
Hi,
check that
everybody. I'm Greg Herdrudder, and I'm the lead VFX artist on the Dead Space remake.
Mm.
What I'm going to show you today
What?
is some of the atmospheric and environmental VFX that have been created
Is that
by
on
our
my
team.
screen or is that on theirs?
These are VFX such
there
as
you
fog, smoke, and pyrotechnics
Damn
that
you,
help
updates.
populate the Ishimura and help tell the Dead Space narrative.
Ishimiri.
Now, before I show you what we're doing, let's take a look at the original Dead Space and what they did for their environmental VFX. They did an amazing job in setting a very desaturated color palette with everything very muted and everything feels very natural.
Because
Nothing
it's in
feels
space.
fantastical or takes you out of that horror mood. For the remake, we wanted to stay true to this, but look for opportunities to push things further using modern day techniques. The original was quite limited in terms of complexity of VFX, while we have a lot more room to move.
Very true. Baked in lighting
The
everywhere.
first thing I'd like to show you is how some of our VFX can react to changing environmental
Ooh,
conditions.
look at that. Look at those sparks.
So here we have
Nice.
a debug scene, and as you can see, it's pretty much empty with some sparks and drips. These are pretty typical VFX that we'll see in a number of locations in the Ishimura to show damaged areas. What I'd like to show you is how these effects can react to changing environmental conditions, and in this case, what happens when gravity is disabled. I'm going to disable the gravity here, and right now we can see that these VFX are behaving differently, and they're no longer falling to the floor.
The
Now, there's a
sparks
lot
are.
more happening than
That's
just the
kind of
gravity.
cool.
I can make a number of artistic choices
Wow.
as to how the VFX behave. For example, with the drips, I wanted to extend their lifetime so they spread out across the room rather than disappear quickly. For the sparks, I reduced their turbulent motion because when they had a lot of turbulence, it felt like they were still in normal
They
conditions.
look like fireworks now.
There's a
instead
number of things that we
sparks.
can
That's
modify
cool.
so that when the player interacts with these effects, they'll feel believable and well integrated. These little details can really add up to help tell the story.
To add
and
to a
make the
little
Ishimura
detail on
feel like
this,
it's alive.
when Isaac landed right
Next, I'd like
there,
to
the
show you a
camera
little
did
bit
that
about our
shifty thing
pyrotechnics
like it
pipeline.
did on the original
looking at one of our
Dead Space.
explosion
So that's
effects.
actually really cool. That they
This
kept,
is something we'd see when a
because
small
that would
prop
make
is
you go,
getting
whoa,
destroyed.
what the hell's going
Here
on?
we have a
Because the
bunch of
camera's
different
shifting all over the
elements,
place, and
like
it just
a
makes
fireball,
it feel like
smoke,
the room's
sparks,
kind of
and
shifting
debris.
on you, or like
I'll hide a
Isaac's
few of
getting,
these so we can concentrate
you the player
just on
getting
the fire and
tumbled back
smoke.
and forth with
I'll
that
set
camera
this to
work.
loop so we can see it
It's something that was a
continually
little
playing.
bit different than a lot
Something
of
that
the
is
other horror
important to
games.
Dead Space is that we
It's
have a
not
lot
fixed
of dark
camera angle. It's like
environments
literally
that have
everything's
changing lighting
the
conditions.
world's rocking on you.
We were finding that elements such as fire and explosions would look way too bright when the environment was dark, and then would be barely visible when the environment was brighter. So what we had to do was to be sure that our source pyrotextures were rendered in full HDR quality to ensure that the final image would contain the full range of brightness values. I'll slow this down a bit so we can see things a bit more clearly. If I zoom in, the exposure will adjust
Oh, yeah.
so it doesn't appear too blown out, and when I back off, it will readjust. If I change this to a darker environment, you'll see that we don't get a crazy amount of overbrightness, and we're still able to see a lot of detail in the texture. And finally, I'll go to pitch black. It still holds up and behaves naturally.
Yeah, you can
So
actually
this
see
all
more
means
detail in it.
that we
that
can
way.
play a lot with the lighting in our environments, and the VFX will still integrate into the experience well and be legible by the player.
I wonder if you have
Final thing I
so
wanted to show is our interactive
if lighting tech has
atmospheres.
HDR baked into it, and
So
you're
here
trying
I
to
am in
run
another
that
test map.
HDR versus the
I have
HDR
a
on
few
your
debug
monitor
lights floating around
or
so we
something
can
on
see
your
what's
TV,
happening here.
maybe that's
I'll
the
just
reason
back
why it
up
looks
and
kind of
start one of
washed
our
out
Steam
a
effects.
lot of times.
So
In
what do
my
we have
experience,
here?
I can never get HDR
It's
to
a
look right.
volume-based
It just
3D
looks washed
simulation.
out.
It exists
Can never get
inside a
that damn thing
container,
set right.
and density and velocity values are pushed around to create what we see here. Something that's cool about this simulation is that it lives in the physics world. So
Very
if the
cool.
player walks through it, it will interact.
Slightly.
Also,
It could
if I pick
definitely
up an
use
object
some more
like this
whoosh
battery,
to it.
It will also behave quite naturally.
Again, it's
This will work if
barely,
I spawn an
it's
enemy.
barely doing it.
I disable
But
its AI, so it
with a
won't
little
attack
bit
me.
of polish,
As you can see, the steam will collide and interact with him too,
it's
This
the same
effect
character
also
model
works
that they
quite
showed
well
off
with our
before.
lighting
We've seen that.
and renders with the rest of the fog we have throughout our game.
There's so much more
This
detail
can
in
be
that
used
character.
in a number of cases. We
What?
can
They got
create a
little nub
steam or
hands.
smoke effect like this,
What?
or we can cover the floor with a thin layer of
Huh.
interactive
Okay,
fog.
that's a bit
In
different
some
then.
cases, we can even fill an entire room with a cool simulation like this to give us some interesting
They got
and terrifying
secondary
gameplay
hands now.
situations.
Weird. So it must be
So
like to
thanks for
grab you
watching.
and then they go.
I hope you enjoyed
they can,
seeing
yeah.
some of the VFX we're working on.
Little nubby hands.
Ooh, man, that
'Cause
fog
the-
when
the
you
original-
first showed it to us. Oh,
It was
wow.
just the
It
knives
just-
coming out of the hands.
So
like coming at
I've
you.
never been so excited about fog in my life. It's crazy to think that, you know, one of the first truly great horror sci-fi movies, Alien, came out
There you go.
almost 40
Yep.
years ago, and
Yeah.
that scene where they step out into the eggs and there's that layer of fog that they disturb, and now we're finally 40 years later able to kind of do that kind of stuff in video games. How are you planning on using this
Well, we
in the
could
gameplay?
do that before.
of course,
Just
something we're gonna
nobody
use for
implemented it
create specific
into
ambience in rooms
into the
for
to those engines.
storytelling and this kind of elements, but
they're
in
using.
gameplay, where it's
We've seen that
really
before.
amazing is in sequences like, for example, the decontamination chamber in chapter 3. So when you enter that room, the contamination sequence starts and the room fills with fog. And the fog stays at around 1 meter off the floor. And where it gets awesome, it's when you actually have a lurker dropping from the ceiling inside the fog. And
You
now
don't
you see
know.
the poof of smoke when he gets inside it,
Good.
and you're like, where is he gone? And you start to shoot at it, and you're trying to find it.
And now it's
at
like,
some
"Blah."
point, you see those 3 tentacles coming out of the fog, and those moments are really, really scary. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at with that technology. It's how we
Man,
can
Silent
use
Hill
it
fans are
to
gonna be so damn
reinforce
jealous over this.
ambience and really scary gameplay moments. like
That sounds awesome. I want to see it.
Yeah, it's
Damn
it's
it, I
so
wanna
cool
see
to
it.
see all the.
That actually sounds
You keep bringing
awesome.
out all this technology, and it's not technology that's just. Oh, hey,
I
we
just
can do
I
this
want
now,
to see
and we're doing
one
it because we can
room
do it.
where it's
Everything
like
really
poison
is tied
gas,
to like a narrative element.
and then
Every
the
time you're like,
timer is
we
literally
can
the
do this,
gas
but here's
rising
why
up
we're
over the
doing
top
this.
of,
And
then all of a sudden
another
you
area
have to be
that's
submerged
getting
inside the
such a
gas.
huge
You have to
upgrade is,
find
you know,
like the
one
blinking red
one
light
of the
on
challenges
the
the
other side
original
of the
Dead
room or
Space had was
something. You have to fight
zero
off a
G
couple
is
things while you're
very
getting there.
difficult
That'd
to
be
do, and obviously it was
it'd be a pain in
limited
the
in a
ass
lot of ways.
to deal with,
And
but
then
it'd be
Dead
so
Space
cool to
2,
see.
a bit more of the shackles came off, and then now up to current day, you know, you're having floating sparks and all the changes to the water and the vapor in 0G. Does it feel kind of like you have your shackles removed and you're kind of able
Where
to
was the
finally
water?
make
I
the
didn't see
0G
the water in
experience you
that.
kind of dreamed of?
Yeah, it's really about immersion and the fantasy of being in space and how believable that is.
The
And so
next gen immersion.
that's one of the reasons we changed a little bit.
It's like the
how
current gen
the
immersion
Zero G
now,
is working in terms of player mechanic compared to the original. That's why we choose to go the same way as Dead Space 2 and 3 went with Zero G. And now with VFX, with art, with physics, etc.
A lot of people didn't
it's
like
about
3.
Improving
Careful.
the immersion.
Careful, that's a
of
slippery
Zero G.
slope.
And not
on
only
there.
improving the immersion when you're in Zero G, but also putting the emphasis at the moment where it changed from 1G to 0G. And that's something we're doing in some areas of the ship, and we wanted that to be really visible and kind of a wow moment for the players.
It's also giving us the opportunity to do all the things we've wanted to do with Dead Space. Now we get to do those things. We really get to enhance all
Right.
those areas,
Right.
bring more life to them, bring more immersion, and always dialing up the horror as well, right? And make it feel like it's a
You know
scary
who's
place.
watching this right now? Most likely.
because with those elements,
Glenn
with
Sheffield, the one
immersion
that
and the
actually like
interactivity,
co-creator of Dead Space.
comes horror. Now when that
He's working on
sparks
his
of
own
electricity
version of Dead
hits
Space
and
now.
you see
He
all
was
those
working on Call of
things
Duty
bouncing
before.
on you, etc. It reinforces the potential jump scare moment of that thing. It's not just audio and the cool VFX. No, it really also has impacts on you, and
Right, it's part of the physics system, so it reacts properly to whatever rules we have within the game with the character,
Nice.
with the collision. So, like Greg said in the video, that's what makes it so amazing and so embedded, and just enhances the immersion for every element that we're adding.
Yeah, I mean, certainly anyone that's accidentally set themselves on fire with an angle grinder while working in the shop is going to sparks into motion.
Yeah, that's what we're going for.
But hey, you know, when people were noticing in that 0G, they were noticing some things about Isaac's suit, and I think we get to have a bit of a closer look at the changes that have been made to Isaac's suit coming up.
Yep, we're gonna get to see that in the next section, in fact. So let's take a look at the character video, so we can see all the changes we're making and all the upgrades to the engineering suit.
You can
And
now
get
see
a-
his eyes
take a
through
look
his
at the
helmet.
slasher. So let's take a look at the video.
They pull a Doom on it.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam Compagna and I'm the lead character artist on the Dead Space remake. I'm here today to give you a sneak peek on how we created the Isaac Intermediate Engineer suit.
Okay,
the
so we can
slasher,
get some
and
hints
talk
on
about
whether
our
or not this is a
artistic
true
process and our
remake.
tools.
If they change
Before I
up the
get started,
character.
I'd like to warn you
if
that I
they-
will be showing some graphic content. There will be blood
Yeah.
and guts. Well, everything that makes Dead Space so lovely. Let's start with Isaac Intermediate Engineer suit. During the early phase of our project, we took inspiration from the legacy model and we followed the rules that made Isaac's suit so iconic.
It's so plain.
Looking at the ribbing
So plain,
that is
yeah.
inspired by Gothic architectures and human anatomy, the three lines on his helmet, and the overall layered look that reminds us this is a worker's outfit and not a military uniform. This was the thinking we used as we redesigned the suit for our remake. We were tempted to go in a science fiction direction, but kept the suit design low-tech, dusty, dirty, and greasy. We kept in mind that the suit was produced by a greedy corporation like CEC and was built in an utilitarian way, with a low production cost. And so, here we are
This
with
is
the
where
new
your narrative design
making
and art
it
design
functional.
comes
And as you can see,
directly
we made
together.
sure the suit was airtight at the seams to make it feel believable for use in outer space. Here we are in ZBrush, where the character model is sculpted as if it was formed by digital clay.
That's what
This
Isaac
is where
looks
we do
like.
most of our sculpting and where we spend most of our time creating the character. The head is worked in a separate file and in a different way as it is based on
That
Gunner's
might not be
Rights
what
head
it
scan.
looks like.
It is based
Just
on
saying.
Gunner's Rights
Joking.
head scan and come with all his facial expressions. The helmet is worked on separately as well because of the size of the file, as it tends to slow us down. As you can see here, we worked on the outside and inside of the helmet.
He has earmuffs.
So,
Oh, so you
since
can
you already
hear.
saw Isaac in-game on the previous live stream, I will use this time to take you on a tour of Substance Painter, which is a texturing software.
That's some details inside
There
that
are
helmet
plenty
that you'd
of
probably
layers to
never
get
see,
to
but
the
they're
final
there.
result. It goes from the base of the fabric,
Wow.
to the dirt, and many metal variations.
Yeah.
This is here as well
Just
that
make it
we
shiny.
add micro detail like fabrics
If
and
it's, if
grinding.
it's like brass, sort of, then
The
make it
design of
shiny.
the suit was purposely kept low cost. We also avoided rare material like leather due to its rarity on Earth in the Dead Space universe.
Mm-hmm.
We used instead
There you
synthetic
go.
material and
Yeah,
metal that
yeah,
oxidized
yeah.
quickly.
There you go.
We took as reference real-world miners from the 30s, and like them, Dead Space Universe
cool.
miners are given cheap outfit because company didn't equip them well and didn't care about their safety.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've seen Isaac's suit, I'd like to show you a slasher, since there is always one waiting around the corner.
Making the shoot a little,
Oh,
the
busting out
suit
of
a
a
little
van.
more shiny.
We researched the legacy
You
concept
can
of
actually
model,
make the game
taking
pop a
note
little bit
what
more
made the slasher
too. Like in
memorable
low-lying environments,
with its claw-shaped
anything that's
armor and
shiny
deformed
really
body.
just goes. It just stands out on the screen.
Not only the design itself was important to our new slasher, but it was equally important to make it satisfying to dismember and peel away its layers. Here are some visual development on how we wanted to dismember the slasher from its intact state to the fully destroyed one, with all the phases in between. Some peeling, dismemberment with
This
hanging
is
parts,
so
and
much
finally,
more than what the hell
fully
we've seen
dismembered
before.
version.
You rip its arm off. It ripped the arm and the leg off, and it's still like hopping
So,
around.
we started to think about the inside. This is the part that will be revealed when you shoot at the necromorphs. Naturally, we wanted to expose its internal organs since this was the base of our recipe. Then, show it bones, muscles, and fat.
It
We
was a
didn't
human.
wanted to see
A
all the
human.
muscles, as it's only supposed to reveal a wounded part made by Isaac's tools. The next question we asked ourselves was, how could we build a system that fit most of the necromorph?
Wow, so you can actually knock
Well,
its jaw
The
off.
solution was to cut it in pieces.
You
As
can
you
take
can see,
toes
all the
and
parts are
fingers and
separated.
shit off too.
This way,
Damn.
we could use them as we wanted, like for the brute, which is made of 3 humans, we can easily kit batch its skeleton this way. All internal
I
organs
wonder how
are
well
also
this is going to
separated.
hold
This
together,
way,
though.
we could
This
use
is
them
the
as we
Frostbite
wish.
engine, after all.
Now that we covered the inside of the slasher, let's see where we are with the outside. We sculpted it in ZBrush, thinking about how the skin stretched and tore as the limb grew up very quickly during a very painful transformation. The layering is important here, as well as what the open wound will reveal. We have the skin, fat, muscle, cartilage, bones, and we need to see and understand each part. Now I will jump straight into Painter, just like for Isaac and all our models.
I like that's how
we
they
sculpted them
censor
in
it.
ZBrush, but here the texturing and materials are more interesting. First, while we are currently only showing a single skin tone, since the Ishimura is
Great.
crewed by humans from all corners of the galaxy, it makes sense that our slasher reflects a wide range of ethnicities in the final game. You will notice that we reduce the amount of blood and dirt present before you start shooting at it to enhance the visual feedback of the peeling process. Finally, let me show you how we textured this little fellow, adding layers and layers of details to make it more realistic.
This is how we text this.
We start with a plain color as base, and then we add some layers that will have an influence on the reflection, color, and micro volumes. We took care to think about how the wounded skin would look like, bloody, but yellowish when it's dried of blood. Then we added some more subtle details like veins,
Wow.
and peel valve.
It gets
And
better.
to finish, let's add...
I was actually thinking that
well,
might be
You
the...
already guessed what? Blood.
Nice.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Isaac
Very
suit
cool.
and the slasher work
There's
in
more
progress.
detail.
You gotta love that even in production of the game, you have to keep the parts of the necromorph separated. Otherwise, you'll have necromorphs running all over your computer. You won't be able to get anything done in ZBrush. A necromorph will be swiping at you.
You got to keep them separated. And then you got to keep adding more and more blood. That's the secret.
Yeah,
Yes.
more blood,
more,
more is more.
Always more.
Yeah.
That's
More.
the secret
We want more
identity, by
here.
the way.
Yeah.
It's Yazilla. That's how they call him in the team.
Yes,
More.
wants more all the time.
I need more.
How much more
never
blood can we fit
satisfied.
into the engine before it starts
We've
lagging?
got a saying over at Banger
Give me
TV,
more.
less is not more is more, and love seeing that in a Dead Space game as well. I mean, the peeling effects,
you have
the
like a
ripping
blood
effects,
slider on the computer?
It seems
How much
subtle, but
blood
it's
can your
such a
computer
massive
handle?
gameplay
Boy.
change when you try it out. The first time you hit a necromorph in the head and the face is gone and you're left with a skull, it's like it's an entirely new enemy. At what point in the development process did you kind of realize, hey, maybe we could do something like this?
Yeah, pretty early. I mean,
at the
yeah, it
start.
was
Yeah,
quite
that was the
early
first thing that they
Came
showed
on
off.
at the beginning of the project, and the idea was like, okay, so we were looking at elements.
They were like,
that,
here's a
we could,
teaser.
improve or enhance in the original, and of course, dismemberment, it's the killer of Dead Space. It's in terms of gameplay, it's the main thing. So, in terms of precision, in the original, in Dead Space 2 and 3, it's already pretty precise. So we're like, okay, maybe we can go a bit more precise, but nah. It's not gonna add that extra impact, and so that's where we started to discuss. Okay, let's add the precision, not in terms of how you cut enemies, but in terms of the point of impact. And so that's where we started thinking. And earlier on, we did not call that peeling. We were actually calling that body destruction, because it was that concept that we wanted to see precisely the point of impact, and we wanted to see pieces of enemies flying, and so give the opportunity to the player to really
Right.
dig up to the
Right.
bone before starting to cut the necromorph. And so that's where we started, and iterating from here, that's where when we go, okay, so we need peeling layers with flesh,
Is it
muscles.
really
internal
still there,
organs
though?
That can,
That
get
seemed
blown
like a
out,
lot
when
for
you shoot
the
them in the
for
belly or
anything,
dead,
any
those
type
kind
of engine
things.
to handle.
And
If they can get away
the
with
goal
it, cool.
behind that was like, yes, of course, to make it more gruesome, etc. But quickly,
But the thing is, the
we
Frostbite
figured
engine
that
is
we
not
were
the most
also
reliable
improving
engine, so
something really core to the gameplay, which is the feedback you
it's
have
great when it works
when
well.
you shoot at an enemy. Because in Dead Space, in the original, you get a lot of
If they know what they're doing, though,
good
they can make
feedback
it
when you're
work.
shooting an enemy with a cutting weapon, like
Yep.
with the plasma cutter, you cut body parts, etc. You get a strong sense of okay, how much damage I did. But when you're using the flamethrower and you're starting to burn the opponent, how much damage did you do? When you're using the force gun, you shoot at him, the necromorph goes on his ass, he stands up. Okay, how effective was that thing to the necromorph? Now you get a pretty good feeling, a pretty strong feedback of that, because you see the flesh burning and then you start to see the muscle underneath it, etc. When you're using the force gun, and the guy
Everything blows
stands
up,
up,
it starts to stand
and you
up,
see
it's
that
like,
all the
you
flesh is
son
gone, and
of
the
a
muscle is
bit, and
gone,
you actually have that
can
moment,
see the
that'd be
bones
awesome.
in the rib cage. You're like, yeah, okay.
That'd be that
I
movie
did some
style
damage
moment.
here.
That worked,
Yes.
And then
That's really the goal here.
And there's a lot of research that we did also, looking at lots of gore and bloody stuff.
I don't want to see your internet history.
Just taking a couple of trips to the butcher
Yes.
shop, leaving with a big bag of organs.
Organs.
Sorry, hey, do you know where a hardware store is? I need some hammers.
Right?
Yeah, we're on a list somewhere. So yeah, and we did a lot of explorations early on. We really pushed it quite far, make it like really bloody, really disgusting, and it was a lot of fun. But we also wanted to make sure that it was readable, that it didn't get too complex and too detailed,
Right.
And it could still read in that environment. And I think we found a pretty good balance. So yeah, we're really psyched to have shown you those results today. Pretty cool
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and then just all the language involved in the remake of Dead Space is so great. Just coming home, honey, good news! The budget approved body destruction.
Lots of glistening parts.
It's the expense reports that are hard to do, but that's
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the other things that's just such a little detail, but really kind of brings back to that lived-in world pillar you're
47
talking about is
minutes
a detail that just jumped out to me when you're saying it. You're going through Isaac's suit and you're mentioning that there's no leather on it because cows are gone, and
That's
if
it.
you've got leather, you're pretty rich.
Exactly. We always have to factor that in, right? Even though we can do something, even though we have the tech, even though we could do that, it doesn't necessarily
only if the
mean we
narrative calls
should.
for it.
We have to look at the narrative of the game, think of resource conservation, and always plan and design with that in mind. And that's something that we did. Like early on, his suit had those leather parts, but we go, yeah, but they wouldn't really have that. So we went with a synthetic material that still, looks like it, but it has to be more accurate. So there's a lot of thought.
A fully
that's put
gold
into
suit.
Every single thing that you
You
see
hit the
on
mega
suits
bucks.
to make it more functional, to make it more credible, more realistic. But as always, respecting the original vision, the art direction, and being true to that, right?
That'd be actually kind of a cool
and
thing.
I'm sure cosplayers are going to thank you for the lack of use of leather, but they're going to be really mad when they find out that there's little thrusters on his back that move as he's going around in zero G.
Sorry. It's fun in the game.
good details.
Now, it's obviously really hard to follow up something like characters and
come across
you've
like a
got
chunk of
lighting
gold,
as
and then
the
you
as
hit
the
the button
last,
and
the kind of the
it
big
makes you a
pillar to
suit.
close out the show, and it might seem a little
Just
surprising to
saying.
people, but I think when you show all the stuff you've done with lighting, they're gonna kind of really understand why we're going there.
Yes, this is actually
Yes. We have a
lighting-
really cool
lighting is my favorite part.
lighting video to show, and you're gonna see the
lighting and
behind the
details.
scenes of how we're making it, all the different light fixtures that are used, the color temperatures, the mood and feeling. So let's take a look at that.
Hello, my name is Mike Yeomans, and I'm a lighting lead here at Motive. Today my teammates and I are going to talk a bit about the lighting on Dead Space Remake. First of all, we're going to talk about how we are recreating the fantastic lighting design of Dead Space 1. We'll follow up with our lighting process and advances
If you guys
in
do a
real-time
real good
lighting.
job, I don't have to
And lastly,
use
we'll show you
GeForce
how we
experience
create an
on the
immersive sense
PC.
of atmosphere, which is an important visual pillar for us. Dead Space had iconic design down to the last detail, and the lighting fixtures weren't left out of this equation. They just felt unique and that they fit into the design of the ship perfectly.
It was very baked in
We have
lighting. though.
reimagined the lighting design of the Ishimura and Valor, staying true to the originals while creating additional fixtures that fit into this established direction. The fixture design feels modern while the bulb technology feels grounded in the present day.
Okay.
We are creating the illusion of depth in our fixtures so you can see the inner workings of the bulb beyond the glass using emissive shaders with a parallax effect. The brightness of the fixture respects the intensities of their real-world counterparts, and our lighting system uses the surface area
It's so
of our
bright.
emissive surfaces to determine how bright the bulbs get. Our volumetric lighting
great.
creates realistic cones of light that are unique to each fixture design, so we get really interesting shards of light with a hint of color.
Cool.
Much like in the real world, we use Kelvin temperature to determine the hue of our lights, so once again they feel familiar to what you would expect in real life.
On the cookie. Oh, without the
Area
cookie
lights
texture.
were previously
And
reserved
they have the
mostly
cookie.
for cinematics due to their increased performance cost. We are using them more extensively in Dead Space Remake, as they help to create convincing specular shapes, diffused lighting and shadows, and a more accurate volumetric shape. Simply put, they have lighting qualities that standard spotlights just can't achieve.
Right.
Area lights make the most sense for rectangular-looking light.
That was one of
fixtures
those
such
big
as
things that they
signage.
did with lighting,
would have been
where
hard
all
to
of a sudden you
reproduce
see a
the
shadow
lighting
up on the
from these
wall, and
types
it's like,
of
oh,
sources
something's
with
going to come around the
more
corner,
light.
and then you go around the corner and it's
Hi,
not there,
My
and you're
name
like,
is Mathieu
oh.
Tétrault, and I'm a senior lighting artist on Dead Space Remake. Our lighting artists are able to craft the lighting in real time and control exactly how much indirect light or global illumination is bouncing around the scene. In previous game,
Okay,
we have
so
to
it
build
is basically
offline
baked in.
calculation
It's
to
not really
pre-compute lighting
ray
and
tracing or
apply it
anything,
to geometry in the form of light maps.
which is
This
fine.
was time-consuming for artists.
Dance
and
party!
included any drastic lighting changes. Our remake is using a new GPU probe system, which allow real-time approximation of indirect light. Artists can get direct feedback from the change and can better match the amazing concept art.
Very, very cool.
Our tools allow lighting artists to visualize individual lighting passes and material properties, to isolate issues and iterate on quality.
So think about all this
As each
stuff the
light is
next time you
activated
read
and dialed in,
changes
we
to
can see a
lighting
bounce light
design
react
on
in
certain
real time.
level. This is all the
This
stuff that they're
approach
going
was
through and tweaking.
essential to ensure we can accommodate all the
Oh,
drastic
it's not that
lighting
big of a
changes
patch
that occur
update.
in real time in
This is
front
all
of
the stuff that
player.
they're doing to make that patch
Scary
update
lighting
happen.
changes,
It's not simple trying to jump
Currency.
in, change anything. Nice, nice.
light flickering.
To
We
give,
place fixture
to,
in the
to
ship,
make the world
much
come
like a light
alive.
being assembled in a shipyard. Then we give an area a distinct character by changing the behavior and setting on each fixture instance. This allows each area to have its own signature mood, ambience, and level of horror. We focus on developing credible light behavior, such
That
as
fog,
flickering, that
though.
is specific to different type of light.
Okay, the lighting
from
looks really
fluorescent
cool.
to incandescence and halogen.
The fog can
Imagine
drop
an
your frame
fluorescent
rate
light
down
tube
because it's something that's
constantly
rendering on
flickering
the
while
fly.
trying to turn on. In this video, we can see
Just
how the
saying,
electrical current
just
is
saying.
driving the behavior of different fixture technology.
If you're on older tech,
fluorescent
fog is
to
a
incandescent.
very bad thing because it drops the frame rate down. It makes the game run slower.
Hi, I'm Guillaume Goudreau. I'm a lead
Unless it's implemented really well
In-game
in the
development,
coding.
we often use fog to help simulate atmospheric perspective and
Mhm.
add ambience to a
It
level.
always adds detail.
It
but
is used to communicate a sense of depth and detach the different element of the background. In Dead Space, the atmosphere of the ship is one of the key contributor of the sense of horror. To create
character
that
in its own
atmosphere,
self.
we've gone one step further. We are putting a lot of energy into creating a realistic volumetric fog solution.
Mhm.
First, we need a lot of control to create the dreadful atmosphere expected in Dead Space. With our system, we can simulate a layered fog approach. We have control over the texture that move and shift inside of the fog. We can control the speed of the movement and detail in the texture. We can recreate a fog
lot like
grouping
video
along the
editing.
floor. We have also control over the absorption. It gives the feeling of a thick, dense smoke that absorbs light. Very much like the smoke that collects on the ceiling during a fire. We can also control the color of the fog for those moments when we need a little extra punch. Second,
Very cool.
we need
This
a
is very,
convincing
very
light
cool.
interaction with the fog.
I wonder how it's going to be running
When
on
we
the systems.
combine our lighting and the fog,
Yes.
we immediately see the impact.
Yeah.
We can easily sculpt and tweak the shard of light cutting across the room.
Oh man, imagine something
really
walking
add a
through
lot
that
to a
fog
scene.
like right
We
back
can
there
go
and
from
just
the
like starts
simplest environment
creeping
to a
towards you and
gloomy
whatnot.
looking
It look
scene.
cool as shit.
Lastly,
And you're like,
we need something flexible. Whenever we have a big change and we need to adjust the mood of the scene, we can animate and adjust the environment fog. This is especially useful when we do transition from the inside of the USG Ishimura
To the outside. Yep.
We will be able to contrast the heavy ambience.
Where are we
of
talking about?
our
Outside
interior
spacewalking,
with the
or
complete
is
lack
it
of atmosphere in the outer space?
like the garage?
Boy, oh man, I can't, I can't believe there's some poor soul on the Ishimura who has to inventory every single different type of light bulb you put in there. I don't know who has a harder job, Isaac or the light bulb guy.
Yeah.
There's probably
Poor
like
guy.
6 different
All the
lights,
guys that we haven't-
and they just
It's the future, so energy saving energy, like that's it's what is needed there.
I definitely want to open a node door and not have any treasure in there, just a wall full of different light bulbs, just racks and racks. So
With
the
some
thing
fog
about
effects
lighting, though,
going on.
is from the stuff you've shown, the amazing stuff I've gotten to see, it really seems like the narrator in Dead Space is lighting, and you're kind of using it almost as a silent character.
It usually is.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's how we're crafting all of our scenes, right? Like we purposely will set the scene, making sure that the lights are placed in
Light
the
bulb
right
comes on
areas.
this way.
And also, as you saw in the video, there's different types of lights, light fixtures, temperatures, so that we can control and craft the experience that the player has in every area.
And we also use lighting to direct the player to where we want him to go, either for objectives or to where we want him to go, either for objectives, but also sometimes to surprise the person with either like a jump scare or not, like drive the tension up, but just playing with expectations, player expectations. So that's what
You don't want
lighting
jump scares
is
every 2
used
seconds,
for,
because then it's just
by our
like,
team,
okay, yeah,
and
we
it's
know
just
something's going to happen.
Yeah, and I also noticed one really subtle thing about lighting is that one of the sparse few criticisms of the original game is that it was very brown, and it seems like there's a lot of use of light to kind of change mood, a little bit of color without going overboard. Because obviously, I mean, even just as something as subtle as going from a warm light to a cold light, and I went from looking like I'm in a cozy basement to like I'm ill, right? So yeah, all these little splashes of color that don't break the kind of drab, scary feeling.
Also,
but
red
kind of
lights, you
give
know,
that
it's
little
like
bit
makes
of
the player
visual
go,
breakup
oh, what's going
to it.
on? What's wrong?
Exactly, yeah. And that's it. Like, we still wanted to retain that horror pillar, like I said earlier, is that making sure that we don't, in an effort to add more diversity to all the different areas, we didn't want to, be too saturated, too colorful, but just have enough emotion. And,
Go back
play
and
with
check
the
out
intensity of the
Doom
light,
2016 when you're riding the
so that we
elevator
have
up just
more of
before
that
the
feeling
Doom
of
logo
riding
pops up.
in
You'll
the different
notice
levels.
there's green lights and it's fully lit, and there's a green light over there to like make the character like relax for a second, and all of a sudden, boom, Doom. It's
All
like,
right, you're on to me.
Feed Yazilla.
they do that stuff all the time.
And in
And also
in true
hand
horror
holding, too,
fashion,
like,
we
this
not,
light
we
turns
didn't
on.
have
This is the
one
door
fog
over here that you wanna
presentation,
go
we had
through.
2 fog presentations.
is a
I mean,
highlight
Silent Hill
thing. This
fans
is
in
where
the
you're
chat
trying to
will
go
really
to.
be happy to hear how much fog work we're getting. What's the kind of difference between the 2 fogs and the one you kind of showed here? Where are you going to use that? How is that going to be applied?
But if you ever played the original Dead Space, you know that we had to work hard on the fog because there's a lot of those in the game. It's used
And
a lot.
limited
to
hardware with
create
fog
different
is like,
elements and stuff. And so that's why we felt we need those 2 different pieces of technology. One that is a bit more diffused that we use in bigger environment like the engine room, chapter 3.
This should work, no
environment,
problem at
but
all,
to
too, 'cause
create
they
that
have
depth
way
and
more
be
power
able
to work
have these
with
different
now.
layers of lights.
Like
and stuff.
way more power.
And one, like we talked before, really for specific moments, specific ambience where we want maybe smaller room with a bigger feel of being isolated and alone inside that room where the fog is going to be
Dear
more
God.
dense. And we'll be able to play a bit more with it.
And from what I understand, we might actually get to see some of that happening in dare I say in game. in game.
Yeah, maybe.
Soon, maybe.
Soon?
I think
Summer
we
Games
also have
Fest?
a little bit. We get the we're getting a little collector's edition treatment here, where we've also got some pretty gorgeous concept art that I've seen to show the people to get them
the art book, right.
all excited, all on edge.
Here's
before we
two
give a little
images from the art book. Go and buy our $80 version of it.
So what I wanted to do is I want to show some cool concept art
we already seen
of
this.
the engineering deck.
Oh, they weren't supposed to show this
but
before, I guess.
Just very quickly before I do that, I want to take this moment to thank the art team
Yes.
for all their hard work.
I
They're
know this
super,
area.
super
Okay, so
passionate
then you would
about,
shoot the block
working
over
on this
here and
game.
you'd pull yourself
They put in a
forward,
lot of
and then it was
hours,
like, is
and
something gonna jump
there's a
out
lot
at
of
me?
love
I
and
know this
care
room.
in making sure that we get this right. We do justice to the original, and we honor it. So we're super fans
By the way, this is
ourselves,
the only Dead Space I ever
and
played.
we hope
Was the
that
first.
that comes through, and the work
I've been
that
wanting to play the
you're
second and
seeing
third
today.
one. I just haven't gotten
So
there.
once again, thank you, team. So
Nice.
to kick it off, so here's the concept art of the fuel depot to show you how the pillars of horror, immersion, and a lived-in world all come together in this industrial.
If I remember
themed
right, you
chapter.
should have
So
suit
I'm just gonna
version
quickly
2
go
on.
through them. Here you could see the fuel storage concept. You could see the machine shop. And time again,
Right,
we're always
yes.
applying those same
You get
rules.
lost in this
lighting,
damn room if
VFX,
you're not careful.
fog.
Because you're like, wait, what am I supposed to? Because you'll be missing like
Volumetrics.
one piece of the puzzle.
So this is the first
and then you have to
concept of
kind of
the
look
machine
around
room.
like, wait a second, hold on.
And then here's one more. We love just
Yeah,
you can see the suits hanging.
The suits on the right.
Yeah.
Give me that. Give me that.
Yeah.
I'll take one.
That's it. We're always thinking of how the crew would work and live on the Ishimura to make it, exactly, make it credible and lived in. And then the last two concepts I just wanted to show was of the engine room. So this is one of the most iconic areas in the chapter 3 engineering deck. And so here it is in the off state. It's looking very dark. It's very ominous. And then here it is in the on state. As you can see, we're dialing up the intensity by using color and light to show the visual progress and build emotion and bring this area
This concept
to life.
art just made me think of something.
So like we said at the start, we're still pre-alpha.
We'll wait till I get my
However,
moment to
what we're going to show right
say it,
now
but-
in game is actually something that we have spent a bit of time polishing. Like if we were saying that this is pre-alpha, it wouldn't be entirely true. There's been some work done by our team to bring it to L4 to have a higher level of quality. So this is closer to the level of quality that we'd expect for the entire game. There's still some work left on our side, but yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Still not yet ready to ship that.
Not ready to ship,
Right,
but
yeah.
it's getting closer.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I love referring to the footage we're about to see.
Summer's
They were
Game
not even the
Fest
footage, the live
next
gameplay we're
month.
about to see as pre-alpha.
Jeff Keighley gets all the
It's,
exclusives, you know.
Doesn't look pre-alpha to me.
All right.
Let's look
All
at the
right,
engine room.
take a
So
look.
it's in a specific state in the sense that all the AI got removed, etc. So it's really to showcase
Wonder if they're gonna-
the environment. So if we can switch to the in-engine gameplay, please. Thank you.
And then, of course, the goal with this is that we wanted to show all of you how, we've crafted this story, how all the different elements that
Hello,
we've shown
my
during
name is
the-
Mike
the
Yelkins.
presentation.
We
just a
have
second.
the video of lights playing at the same time.
Just a second. Okay. here
And
we
there's
go.
some fantastic lighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah.
Here's
So
the
just like
engine.
we saw in the concept, it's dark. It's really hard to see what's out there, and
Yeah, this
we
looks
do that
great.
on purpose to contribute to the fear of the unknown. Right? You don't know what's back there. We're doing that on purpose. But then there's
The
just
original
a
game
little
ran
bit
at
of,
30 FPS also. This is
life
definitely
in
running
there, just so
higher.
that it's not a completely dead scene.
So everything is going to look way
and then as we
smoother.
look above us, we see the massive engine, and it's again, it makes us feel small and insignificant, right? It's looming.
Mask on. Power substation. Cool.
So as we're looking around, we see all those effects that you saw earlier in gyms. Now you see it here, steam coming out of the pipes. There's some secondary animation with the moving pistons. It gives life, it communicates that this is an
The only thing that this
industrial
kills is if they do a gameplay demo where they start fighting against
we're
enemies.
always
The shock and
leading
awe
the player
factor is
with a little
gone
bit
of
horror storytelling, a little bit of the
exactly
narrative, we have the Maurice
how
tools
shiny,
and
exactly how
crates.
detailed everything is.
I love the masks on sign up there.
Yeah, yeah.
Quite thematic.
Safety first. Dead Space is a game about safety.
Okay, so in this state,
course, we're at the
now we're in a state where it's starting to, we've powered the room, so the engine is slowly starting to rotate, a little bit of life to it. Lights, you can see the blood.
You'll have to speak up. We've booted up an engine.
Yeah, it's
Let's follow the blood trail then.
Yeah, that's the sign of this
It's always a
way.
good idea.
All right.
So here we go. This is the
Hey.
iconic
Hey, thanks.
poster that we saw earlier.
You can see the different treatments on the blood, like the one that is still wet, blood that's got dried up on the side.
Oh my God! Hurry up and like show
There's
the rest
more,
of the
more
footage.
types of
More,
blood,
more.
more blood states, more blood
I gotta run
conditions.
for a quick minute.
And then we finally get here, and we're gonna activate the engines.
Turn it on.
Let's turn it. And we look up above us, and then we can see this glorious, VFX. The engine's fully operational. It's open. It's spinning at full speed. It's like a beating heart. The room has come to life, and we have completed the transformation. And then as we look to the right, we witness the scene of a horrific bloodbath. And some bad stuff happened there.
Again, just that great teamwork between the environment artist and the story artist. Like,
Yes.
I mean, you can really you can guess what happened there.
Mm-hmm. And then we're back into darkness as we make our way down. And then we take one last look at the engine and then the smoke-filled room. And that's it.
There's those sparks.
Yeah.
And that's it for today. We're
All
gonna
right.
save some stuff
There
for
we go.
later. Okay,
Oh
so
man,
everyone.
it's so like I said, you've been showing a lot of this.
When's
to
the release
us,
window for
for
this?
a long time
They
now,
don't
and,
have
man,
one
seeing
quite yet?
Seeing the improvement every time.
They're
and
still
just
working
how
on bug
amazing it's
fixes and
looking right
stuff.
now. I can't believe that's not like a finished product. I can't believe there's more work you're gonna do in there. It seems impossible.
That's the reason why we usually send these guys on press tour. There's always more work. So at one point we send them, go away. We have to wrap this up.
Wait, there's not There's plenty of stuff to do yet.
Oh, there's still plenty. More.
If they're talking to me, they
Oh my
can't
God,
be talking to
yes,
anyone
wrap
on
it
the
up.
team. Tell them to put more stuff in the game.
That room
I gotta run for a quick minute, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about something that I hope they implement into this as a kind of prequel storyline to what's going to be happening, because they had a prequel storyline, but they didn't do.
Like we said,
They sort of did something with it before.
Yes, that fight is fucking awesome.
Well, definitely. All right. Well, I guess we're actually nearing the end of the stream. So, Blaine, I want to thank you for being with us today to discuss, to ask your questions away. It was great having you. And thank you for taking part. We're actually going to see you next week, right? So
Next week?
See you in person. I'm gonna get a little hands-on action. I'm really excited.
They're doing
Thanks so
another
much
dev
for
stream or
including me.
something?
I mean, any opportunity I have to just gush about this game, whether it's the first one or the work you're doing right now, I'll gladly take any I can. So
Great.
thanks so much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for being
much. Thank you.
Roman, Mike, thanks a lot. It's always great to see all of this come together for you to take part of this. Mike, I know it was a lot of work for you, our team, to create all of these videos, to create this amazing
Oh my God,
playable
wrap it
level.
up.
So thank you. It is important.
It's always an honor to be able to show the artwork.
Oh, for sure. We're here standing and looking smart, but it's like the team that actually did all the
Yes.
work. So it's important to actually state that. I want to thank the team at Motive, everyone from the art, but everyone that works on the project, our internal EA partners, our external EA partners, the passion, the love, the hard work that you're putting in this game, it really shows. And I hope that everyone that's watching today actually can recognize all the care and love that's going into creating those nice slashers and those nice moments. At this point, like I said early when you started the stream, we were able 2 weeks ago to do our first full walkthrough of the entire game. All features, the chapter structure, some novelties that we haven't yet talked about. It was all there for us to play. Our directors, Roman, Mike, everyone, the lead, the team, were able to exchange on, all right, well, what's next? Like, how can we improve what we already have?
So they got through the full run through of it.
Higher quality game.
They're trying to
we're
do
able
bug
to take
fixes,
all of these notes and plan the work that's ahead of us. Make sure that we have a
tests.
smart way to tackle all of this to bring the game to a conclusion. So that's basically where we're
probably
at.
roughly about
So
3 to
from
4
a team
months
perspective,
left.
we're going to put our head down and work towards the next objective that we have, which is going to be to do our gameplay reveal in October, let's say close to Halloween-ish. So that's going to be the next time where we're going to be broadcasting and talking about the game in a more substantial way. Also, we're actually in the position right now to be able to say that, well, our release date of January 27, 2023 is kind of right around the corner. It's getting by really fast. We're getting there. And we're definitely looking forward to be able to put the game in the hands of players. So mark your calendars, tell your friends, make sure that they know that the game's coming, because we want this game to be a success. We love Dead Space, so hopefully you're able to get that word out.
And hopefully you love Dead Space.
Oh, hopefully you love what we make for the remake. So I guess that's a wrap. Thank you for watching the live stream. We're going to read comments. We're going to read the feedback that you have. Hopefully there's plenty. And we're more than happy to have shown you a slice of the game today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bring me up again. So yeah, there was so one of the things that I was thinking about as they were going through, because they were showing off the artwork, and it made it pop in the brain, which I actually had kind of forgotten about until they just showed that off. They had the if you remember, they had this like prequel motion comic type of thing, or motion artwork or whatever. I forget what the hell they actually call it. I'm just going to call it motion comic, where it was showing the Ishimura before all hell broke loose. Like they were showing basically it was like the story of like how they found the relic alien thing there that makes all the stuff happen on the Ishimura. They end up mining it out. They bring it up on the ship and they're going to study it, and then all of a sudden some weird stuff starts happening and everything, and then the next thing you know, there's like, people are doing like mass suicides and everything. So what I would really love to see, since this is a remake of it, I would love to see that storyline get added into where you actually play through it. So you actually go through the whole thing of like the prequel of you're a worker on the ship or something. Like the prequel chapter, I would say, should really be you're like a worker on the ship. You end up the cinematic is they scan through the planet, they find the relic thing. It's been a while since I've seen this story, so I might not have all the points exactly pinpointed in. It's been like 10 years since I've seen the story, but it's just like that's how much it like hit of like, whoa, okay, so this is the reason why the Ishimura is so messed up. This is the reason why you have, you go into one of the rooms and there's like mass bodies laid out and everywhere. It's because of the prequel story that it hits so hard. So I feel like that should really be implemented into this one way or the other. Hopefully it is, and hopefully they end up mashing that into there. If they retell the story, then this is a proper remake. This is the reason why I say it's a remake. Everything in this feels like a remaster, like it's a rebuilt remaster of this. And again, it's that industry thing of like the way that they use remake. A lot of the developers, even they take the remake. I get it. They're remaking the room and they're remaking the suit and everything. Well, is it a reboot, or is it, because this feels like it's identical to the original? I don't see too much, like they're even saying like they're taking the original stuff and they're retelling the storyline, but in a more fancier, more higher detailed environments, and higher detail on the suits, and now the enemies have a lot more detail to them too of what they're shooting, but it's still the same enemies, it's still the same suit, it's still really the same room. They just retexture and move some stuff around. So again, that's a remaster. That's not a remake. They are rebuilding it, but they're rebuilding it into a remastered version of something that was already there. If you're remaking it, you're retelling the story, you're reshaping what the Ishimura looked like, you're reshaping what the weapons are, what they do, and everything. To me, that's and here's like, that's the thing of it too. Like, some companies will call it a proper remake of like like, we are retelling stories, we are redoing that, and then you have something like this where it's like it's a remake, but we are doing the exact same thing. We're just making it in the modern day, art styles and engines and lighting and everything. It looks great. It looks great. It's just the labeling of it. It's like, what is it? What engine is it running on? Actually, the Frostbite engine. I was thinking they were probably using a Unreal Engine or something, because all the stuff that they got going on. That's another one too. This is running on the Frostbite engine. Now, we know from the modding community that Frostbite engine, I mean, in all honesty, we've seen it on multiple games that have come out on the Frostbite engine. They can make it look very shiny until you actually start to play it, though. We don't know exactly how well this is going to run. They might get a delay into next year, because all this, if they're just now getting into bug fixes, I don't think we have a release date for this. If we do have a release date, that is like a window release date of like, this is like the ETA on when we think it's going to come out. The thing with the Frostbite engine, there's a reason why EA wants to get away from the Frostbite engine, because they've had nothing but problems with it. And when it works really good, and it looks really good. Mass Effect Andromeda looks great, but that they've had, like the face meshes and stuff have had problems in the past, or lighting issues with it and everything in the past. That's two of the major things that is run with Dead Space, is lighting, fog effects, and environmental stuff, and detailing in the environmental stuff and everything. You might walk into a room and, if the Frostbite engine does not load the level of detail correctly, all of a sudden you're going to start having pop-ins of different, blood stains on the walls and everything. It happens with this engine. There's a reason why EA's like, yeah, let's maybe take, I think it was the next Need for Speed. They're going to try and work in Unreal Engine 5 and the Star Wars games, I do believe it is. They're going to try their hand at UE5 with those two titles. Maybe it was Battlefield. It might have been also Battlefield, because all the shitstorm that has been Battlefield of the map falling apart and everything. But yeah, this feels like the original. I would just like to see some of the, like I said, the prequel storytelling, because a lot of people didn't actually check out the motion comics. I always thought the motion comic stuff was cool, and it was free on the Xbox 360 way back. So I would love to see that storyline of, like, actually run through that storyline of finding the relic. All of a sudden, you're working and you hear like that in the background, and stuff, rings through the vents and all that stuff. While you're walking down to the cafeteria to grab lunch for the day, all of a sudden you hear and then it's just gradually starting up little bit by little bit, and then all of a sudden, you have like the people that are losing their minds, and then you end up witnessing that whole. I don't know how much they can do nowadays with like a mass suicide, but back in the day they could get away with that stuff, or at least do something to where you see it on the you're walking through the area where everybody's like boarding the ship and everything, and the little hangout area, and then you get called into another office or something, and then all of a sudden you see it up on the TV of like, do we will save ourselves or whatever, and then the camera just cuts out as you hear bang, and then when you walk back out there, everybody's just laying on the floor. They could do it that way, censor it a little bit, but still tell the story of it. Animated movie they made was brutal, and that's what they need. Never finished it, but that's what they need to make this game really just stand out from the original, because the original was already brutal and gory and bloody, and it had a, I would say, again, Dead Space is a very much shoot 'em up, but I would say Dead Space to me is more so than Resident Evil, more so than Silent Hill, Dead Space is probably one of the best horror ones that keeps you on your toes of like, oh shit, that just popped out. Okay. And it really kept you going that way. By the halfway mark of the game, once you start to really get in tune with how to shoot everything in the face and blow it up, and you get, better weapons and everything, it just turns into a shoot 'em up. It turns into like Doom for me. I'm just like, okay, I can just shoot you in the face. I know how to do it. Bah, 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 done. It's not scary at that point. Like, but that was one of the things though with Dead Space is like all of a sudden 0G gravity, and now you have things floating at you and you can't hear it. That's it's another layer, and the pacing of the game was great that way. Glenn Sheffield definitely. That was one of the things he's like, well, you can't use the same jump scare like 3 times in a row because it's done. I think it was him that said that. It was one of the guys that worked on the original Dead Space that said that. I'm like, good, great, yes. Keep coming up with different ways, but they were working on limited hardware. So now, if they keep that same mindset into this one with a rebuilt, environments and everything, there's so much more that they could do with this because they have so much more system resource and everything. I'm excited to see what ends up happening with this thing. Again, though, I'm cautiously optimistic because I know what engine this is running on. Is all these pieces and parts like, okay, you can shoot them and then all of a sudden you blow off their jawline. All right. So is the jawline, what we were seeing before is maybe if you don't hit the jawline all the way, if you hit one corner of it, it would hang off and it would be hanging there as it's like coming at you and everything. Is that stuff going to stay, or are they going to have some bugs with that? Probably they're going to have some bugs with that. It'll probably just fly off, and then, or maybe it'll get what. I'm just waiting for the clip of you shoot it in the jaw and then it gets stuck and it just starts going, on the bomb. That's the Frostbite engine that we know. Maybe they've updated the Frostbite engine so it works really well now. Or again, what's funny is the team that made Battlefield made the Frostbite engine. They've had the worst luck working with it, which is like, I don't know how, but they've had other games like the Jedi Fallen Order was just fine. I didn't really have any problems with that. I've seen some other people that had a couple issues here and there. But third-party teams outside of the ones that actually made the Frostbite engine have been working with that engine better. Like Need for Speed, that's been working on the Frostbite engine for the last like 3 games. Works fine. I didn't have any issues with Need for Speed. I didn't even have textures popping or anything. It was solid. So it depends on what these guys can do with it. Again, what their level of expertise is. But yeah, Dead Space looking really good. Again, I would love to see the prequel thing to make the rest of the story pop. I'm really wondering if they're going to maybe the remake part of it might come in like the second half of the game. They might retell the story into something else where maybe Isaac, because Isaac is looking for his lost wife, I do believe, on the ship or something. That's his reason to go in there. The reason what that's giving the player the motive to run in there. Maybe they give Isaac his wife and then she turns into maybe, and then they can go on with the story. I do know that everybody's biggest gripe with Dead Space is Dead Space 3. That's the one that I've heard the most of. Like everybody's like, didn't really like that one. So maybe they can, if they do go a bit of a reboot route with this story, maybe they can end up shifting away from, just like Max Payne is doing. Like I'm pretty sure 3 is probably just they're getting away from 3. Same thing with this. 3 was more action. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the thing. Again, it's just like Resident Evil. Even Silent Hill kind of went more action. It's just one of those things. Like horror is so hard to do unless you're in like VR and you're surrounded by it and you're inside, the game and whatnot. It's like once you figure out the enemy types, because that's the thing too. Like Dead Space 1, 2, and 3, I guarantee you. I never played 2 and 3. Guarantee you, there's a lot of the same enemies from the first game and the second and third game because they have the architecture of it. They know how to work with it so well. Same thing with Resident Evil. You get a lot, lickers are throughout the whole game. At first, they're like, whoa, this thing can jump at you. It can hit you from far and everything. But then you go, oh, okay, if I just shoot it in the face, it'll stun lock it. And then bang, 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 bang. Game becomes way more easier on the second playthrough. And that's the problem with horror games. Horror games are only horror games on the first playthrough. Once you figure out how to break them, done. It's an action game. If you can shoot and you can do all that stuff. The only other ones that really kind of stay true to the horror roots is games where you can't attack, but the problem with those games, a lot of people get bored with them because you're just running away from everything. Outlast. That's probably the truest to form horror game. The thing is, with the horror genre, it's kind of boring in game. It's great for movies. It's great for ghost stories and movies and music and stuff. Gaming, it does not work ever because it's boring. You're not a true horror. You're not doing anything. You're just getting scared. Autopilot on the following playthroughs. Yeah, that's just kind of one of the things. Go check out the rest of the YouTube channel. There's more Let's Talks, especially Let's Talk Lives and regular Let's Talks and stream replays and all that stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, I will see you next time.